Hey, we got Sophie the Trophy, one half of the Blonde Bombers, coming out and exposing her truth with this Bria Hartley situation, and she's also letting it be known the behind the scenes and what's really going on with Caitlin Clark's injury.
Phoenix Mercury's Sophie Cunningham just detonated a truth bomb that has the entire WNBA scrambling for damage control. Her latest comments about Caitlin Clark didn't just raise eyebrows, they sparked a full-blown panic among league executives and fans alike. When an active player starts openly questioning whether the league's biggest superstar should even continue playing, you know the situation has spiraled completely out of control. The whispers that have been circulating in locker rooms for months just became public ammunition, and the implications are absolutely terrifying for everyone involved.
Dude, I don't know. Everyone keeps asking, everyone's like, and I'm like, literally, she doesn't even know. Like, it's just like a day by day legit type of thing. And so, yeah, she's close, but like, you also have to remember, like, she could be playing if it wasn't in the WNBA by now, but like at this level, with how deep and like how good people are nowadays in our league, which is the best it's ever been, like you can't just be good. You have to be on top of your game. And so just trying to get her back in game shape, I think, is what they're trying to do. But like, again, it's literally a day by day. I'm not holding out any information. I just literally.
The brutal reality is that Clark has been turned into a human punching bag since day one. Every single game features the same disturbing pattern: opponents targeting her with flagrant fouls, officials swallowing their whistles when she gets hammered, and then penalizing her for having the audacity to react. We're talking about blatant cheap shots that would get players ejected in any other professional league, yet somehow these same referees treat Clark like she's asking for special treatment when she complains about getting her face raked. The footage speaks for itself, showing a systematic campaign of intimidation that goes far beyond competitive basketball.
Yeah, and she also would be able to play if this was not sumo wrestling, if this was not UFC, if you guys did not play rugby in these basketball games. She'd probably be able to get out there and do her thing. But she has to put on all this armor, which caused her to get hurt anyway. She had to put on all this armor because y'all don't play basketball. It is rugby out there.
Now, Sophie added the
Cunningham's track record with league discipline tells you everything about the WNBA's twisted priorities. She's been fined more times than anyone can count, essentially funding the league office's coffee budget single-handedly through penalty fees. Yet here she is, the same player who supposedly can't keep her mouth shut, delivering the most honest assessment of Clark's predicament that we've heard from anyone inside the organization. When someone with Sophie's history of saying the wrong thing starts making sense about the league's dysfunction, that should terrify every executive in New York.
Look, listen, Sophie, I love you trying to hold it down. We love that you were trying to hold it down. We wish you a speedy recovery. But as far as what's going on in WNBA, we are on them. We going to stay on them. It's not going to change. It's not going to change. We're on to their nonsense.
The injury situation has become a masterclass in organizational incompetence and suspicious timing. Day-to-day updates that stretch into weeks, medical reports that contradict each other, and a complete lack of transparency about what's actually wrong with their most valuable asset. Fans aren't buying the groin strain narrative when Clark was moving fine during warm-ups, and the fact that team officials can't give a straight answer about her condition screams cover-up. Either the medical staff is completely clueless, or they're deliberately keeping everyone in the dark about something much more serious.
I love Paige to death. Do not get me wrong. I think, I think she's a hell of a player and would love to play with her one day. But those refs were giving her every freaking whistle last night. Like, you literally couldn't touch her. And that shit is so annoying to me.
But Sophie dropped the most damaging revelation when she suggested Clark would already be back on the court if she played anywhere else in the world. Think about the implications of that statement for a moment. It's basically admitting that the WNBA's environment is so toxic and physically dangerous that injuries take longer to heal. In Europe or Asia, where players are treated like the professional athletes they are instead of gladiators in an arena, Clark wouldn't need extra recovery time because she wouldn't be getting brutalized every night. That's not just criticism of the medical staff. That's an indictment of the entire league culture. The economics of this situation make the WNBA's panic even more understandable because Clark single-handedly transformed their business model overnight. Attendance numbers that had been stagnant for decades suddenly exploded, television ratings reached levels that executives thought were impossible, and merchandise sales created revenue streams the league had never experienced. Without Clark drawing crowds and cameras, half these franchises go back to playing in front of empty arenas while struggling to justify their existence to investors. She didn't just bring fans, she brought legitimacy to a sport that had been fighting for relevance since its inception. The contrast between how the league treats Clark versus their chosen golden child, Paige Buckers, reveals everything wrong with their star-making machinery. Buckers gets the red carpet treatment, carefully orchestrated media coverage, and referee protection that borders on embarrassing, while Clark faces constant scrutiny and physical punishment for having the nerve to be more talented and popular. The league spent years building Buckers as their future face, only to watch an Iowa guard completely overshadow their marketing plan with pure basketball brilliance. Now they're stuck trying to tear down their biggest draw to prop up their predetermined narrative. Sophie's fine collection grows every time she points out these obvious double standards, while other players make far worse comments without facing any consequences whatsoever. Angel Reese can openly accuse Clark of getting favorable whistle treatment. A statement so laughably false it defies reality. And the league office stays silent. Coaches can scream at referees and question their competence without penalty, but Cunningham cracks a joke about league politics and suddenly her bank account gets lighter. This selective enforcement exposes the WNBA's agenda more clearly than any investigative report ever could. The European basketball circuit represents everything the WNBA refuses to provide: better compensation, professional treatment, and respect for elite talent. Players routinely make triple their WNBA salaries overseas while enjoying superior facilities, competent officiating, and organizations that actually want them to succeed. Clark could walk into any top European league tomorrow and immediately become their highest-paid player while being treated like the superstar she actually is. Meanwhile, the WNBA would be left explaining to sponsors and television partners how they managed to lose the most marketable athlete in women's sports history. Professional golf presents an even more intriguing alternative that would completely blindside the basketball establishment. Clark's athletic ability and competitive fire would translate perfectly to the golf course, where her existing sponsorship deals with major brands would carry over seamlessly. The Women's Golf Tour desperately needs young, charismatic stars who can attract new audiences, and Clark's crossover appeal would instantly make her one of the most followed athletes in the sport. Plus, golf careers last decades longer than basketball careers, offering long-term earning potential that dwarfs anything the WNBA could provide. The mental health aspect of the situation cannot be ignored, especially considering how other elite athletes have handled similar pressure cookers. Simone Biles, Naomi Osaka, and countless others have stepped away from their sports when the mental burden became unsustainable, and Clark faces scrutiny that exceeds what any of them experienced. Every shot is analyzed, every gesture is dissected, and every game becomes a referendum on her character rather than her performance. When Sophie hints that Clark might be considering an exit, she's probably recognizing signs that anyone paying attention should have seen coming. The fan response to any potential Clark departure would be swift and devastating for the league's reputation. Unlike previous star exodus situations, Clark's fanbase would follow her wherever she goes, streaming European games at ridiculous hours, buying golf tournament tickets, and supporting whatever venture she chooses next. These aren't casual WNBA fans who might stick around for other players, they're Caitlin Clark fans who discovered the league because of her and would abandon it just as quickly. The loyalty runs toward the player, not the organization that has consistently failed to protect her. Without Clark's drawing power, the WNBA's recent growth becomes a house of cards that collapses overnight. Television networks would renegotiate contracts, sponsors would slash budgets, and franchises would return to the financial struggles that defined the league's first 2 decades. The Caitlin Clark effect isn't just a marketing slogan, it's the difference between the WNBA being a legitimate professional sports league and a barely sustainable niche entertainment product. Losing her would set women's professional basketball back years, if not decades. Sophie Cunningham's willingness to voice what everyone else only whispers privately has forced the WNBA into an impossible position. They can't discipline her without proving her point about selective enforcement, but they can't ignore her comments without appearing weak and disorganized. Meanwhile, Clark's silence becomes more ominous by the day, and every missed game adds fuel to speculation about her future plans. The league that should be celebrating their biggest success story instead finds themselves desperately hoping their superstar doesn't call their bluff. The three most likely scenarios for Clark's future all spell disaster for the WNBA in different ways. If she stays and continues getting brutalized, her career gets shortened and fans lose interest in watching their favorite player get destroyed. If she leaves for Europe, the league loses their biggest draw while being humiliated on an international stage. If she switches sports entirely, the WNBA becomes a cautionary tale about how to mismanage generational talent. None of these outcomes benefit the organization that should have been building their entire future around protecting and promoting their most valuable asset. What makes this situation even more damaging is how predictable it all was from the beginning. The warning signs were obvious: the excessive fouling, the inconsistent officiating, the media narratives that painted Clark as somehow divisive despite her professional behavior. Instead of addressing these issues when they were manageable, league officials doubled down on policies that have now created an existential crisis. Sophie Cunningham didn't create this problem by talking about it. She simply had the courage to acknowledge what everyone else was pretending not to see. The aftermath of Cunningham's comments reveals just how fragile the WNBA's recent success actually is when it depends entirely on one player who's being systematically mistreated by the organization she's supposed to represent. Fans aren't just supporting Clark anymore. They're actively rooting against a league that has shown complete incompetence in handling its most precious commodity. When your own players start publicly questioning whether your biggest star should quit, you've lost control of the narrative in ways that may be impossible to recover from. The WNBA built their recent prosperity on Caitlin Clark's shoulders, and now they're discovering what happens when you bite the hand that feeds you.